Welcome to another episode of the Providence Friarcast, presented by PCBB1917.com, your home for Providence College basketball news, notes, and opinions. Now here's the founder of PCBB1917.com and your host, Mike Hopkins.
Jalen's offensive rebound, but more importantly, the free throws. You know, we were able to capitalize on the free throws, Kyron's free throws. Rodney made a timely three as well in that big run that we had. And then, you know, he made 2 free throws there. I'm really proud of the seniors. You know, this 4 years has been amazing with them. I've watched these young kids grow when they were recruited to their freshman year, sophomore year. A lot of ups and downs, but more importantly, all the young men are going to graduate. They're going to represent Providence College in a first-class manner. And as a dad, I'm really proud of that for what they've been able to accomplish.
And welcome back to another episode of the Providence Friarcast. Thanks for joining us. It's been a little bit since we did a podcast, but we are back, and I'm not sure if you heard, but this is March. It's a couple days here before the start of the Big East tournament. We recorded Tuesday night. Brendan McGair and I recorded a little earlier, and you'll hear that in a minute. What you just heard was Ed Cooley after the St. John's game on Saturday. Providence with a 61-57 victory to close out the regular season at 10-8 in Big East play. Obviously, senior day. He was talking a little bit about Jalen Lindsey and Rodney Bullock and Kyron Cartwright and how they made some key plays down the end of that game to win it. And also just a little bit in general about how proud he is of their growth and maturity. So a little bit from Ed Cooley there. You'll hear a little bit from Brendan and I on the St. John's game, a little bit from Brendan and I on the kind of the regular season overall, the 5th straight year with 10 Big East wins for the Friars. And we will look ahead a little bit for Thursday's Big East tournament game in the 4-5 game against Creighton, which tips at 2:30 p.m. on Fox Sports 1. And let's go. Providence off a 61-57 win on Saturday to close out the regular season against St. John's on senior day, getting them to 10 wins in Big East play, which is now the 5th straight year that's happened. All 5 seasons of this current configuration of the Big East with at least 10 wins, which in the prior configuration they'd only done 6 times before 13-14. Just overall, pretty firmly on the bubble. We'll get into that a little bit more later, but 10 wins, tied for 3rd in the league, and the 5 seed in the Big East tournament this week, playing Creighton. Pretty low-scoring game on senior day, but seniors made a couple big plays, and were able to get out of there with a Shamari Ponzales St. John's team. Brendan, let's hear your thoughts on the 10-8 season a little bit, and then the St. John's game.
I mean, obviously, when you look at that 10-8 season, it's very top-heavy, where you have wins over 2 possible number 1 seeds in Villanova and Xavier, but also there's a loss to DePaul in there as well. So you have the yin and the yang in terms of success. You did complete a sweep of St. John's, which I thought was very key, especially Saturday, you know, going into the Big East tournament with double-digit Big East wins. You know, the only team that, if you look at this tournament, do the Friars really have a team that you don't want to face? That would be Seton Hall, a team that, like you and I were discussing right before we came back on the air, Angel Delgado not making the first team All Big East. That was a bit of a snub, at least in my book. But, 10-8, same as last year. And it's a different, like we said, it's a different route to get to that 10-8. There wasn't as many maybe upper echelon wins like there were a year ago, but the Friars, they do own victories over not only 2 surefire NCAA tournament teams in Xavier and Villanova, but also Creighton, Butler. Just taking care of business against those teams, will that be enough to get you into the big dance? I mean, we shall see. You probably would feel a lot better about their NCAA tournament chances, providing they take care of business on Thursday. But the resume is certainly, I guess, it looks good heading into the next phase of the season, which is the postseason, and kicking off with conference tournament action.
Yeah, and I think the important thing, too, obviously been pretty much up and down all season. I think that's pretty clear. You mentioned some of the highlights. There's also been some lowlights, the loss at UMass, losing at home to DePaul. Part of that, they had injuries and some illness throughout the year, but every team has injuries and illness. And Providence fans have to hope that those big wins overshadow the bad losses. I think right now they are, but again, a loss on Thursday and you make yourself vulnerable to bid stealers or teams that can make noise in their own conference tournaments who are on the bubble with you. So I think overall 10-8, I think we're in agreement, pretty solid. In terms of overall from a program perspective, pretty impressive. Obviously, this is a different Big East in terms of maybe the depth and talent from, there's obviously less teams. But to be in double-digit wins in league play all 5 years, they finished pretty much third or fourth pretty much every year in the standings before tiebreakers. So being in the top half pretty much every year, and now with the chance to go to 5 straight NCAA tournaments, and if they win on Thursday to get their 5th straight 20-win season, which is another thing now, streak to look forward to. Is the third longest streak in program history, behind 8 wins in the 70s and 9 wins in the late 50s, early 60s. So things are on the up and up, but that's more something in the off season we can look back on and talk about. As far as the Big East, all conference teams you mentioned, Providence had Kyron Cartwright on the honorable mention. He and Bullock were both second-team performers last season, so a little bit of a step back there. No Providence player going to win Most Improved or Defensive Player of the Year or any of the individual awards. They announced Defensive Player of the Year, Kyrie Thomas. I think that's pretty deserving. Miles Powell, Most Improved. He's been very, very good down the stretch. I think there's an argument there for Alpha Diallo, but Powell's numbers are just better. And then I thought that, as you mentioned, Delgado being snubbed a little bit on the second team. A little bit surprised there's no Jesse Govin there. I guess they put Derrickson as the token Georgetown player on the first and second team. He was a second team All Big East. So I don't know. These awards, we were talking before, they're voted on allegedly, quote unquote, by the coaches or someone in the athletic department or their wife or their daughter. I mean, who knows? But yeah, so it's
that's why you get these head scratchers sometimes.
Yeah, so it's at the end of the day, it's a nice thing, but it's not the end of the world. Probably more often than not used as motivation by people who are snubbed than enjoyed by the players who are on it. But looking ahead at Thursday, obviously Creighton, familiar opponent. They're back this year in the 4-5 game. It'll be 2:30 p.m. on Thursday, playing on FS1. And really, I think, honestly, of all the teams they could have gotten for this matchup in the first round, probably overall the best, in the sense that I think if you got like a Marquette, those are two teams on the bubble. That might be a win and you're in, lose and you're out kind of situation. And then you get, on the other side, you get Seton Hall, obviously, has been a problem, like you mentioned. They lost both games at Seton Hall this year. And Butler has been playing pretty well down the stretch. And another team that's very close to Providence on the bubble aspect. So Creighton actually, I think, on a neutral floor, not a bad matchup. Ken Pom right now says 73-68 Creighton victory on Thursday. I tend to think it'll be played a little slower and in the upper 60s, just off the top, just how I feel about it. But Providence currently sitting at bracketmatrix.com as the 4th 11 seed with an average seed of 10.74. They're in 109 of 130 brackets as of this recording. So some work to do, obviously, but I think most people would agree a win on Thursday and the Friars are going to be dancing for a 5th straight year.
Absolutely. It's a typical Big East tournament. Take care of business on Thursday. Sleep easy Thursday. night, Friday night, Saturday night, and, just gather on Sunday night to see when CBS pulls up the brackets and see where you are, and hopefully not going to Dayton like the Friars did a year ago. I mean, that Dayton loss, that great loss a year ago in the Big East tournament, was that the really deciding factor why they went to Dayton, or was it because of other things that happened in the 2 or 3 days afterwards that kind of made the committee slide the Friars to that first four? I mean, you could argue URI stole a bit a year ago in winning the Atlantic 10 tournament, but that's what you're trying to play for right now if you're PC. You win on Thursday, you feel a lot better about your chances come Selection Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, you really just have to look at it as every game now is an opportunity, and if you keep winning, good things will happen. So if they win, they get most likely Xavier at 6:30 in the semifinal game on Friday. Xavier, for the first round bye, as number 1 overall seed. They'll play the winner of Georgetown and St. John's, which will open the tournament Wednesday night at I think 7 p.m. tip. So Creighton Thursday. Obviously, Marcus Foster, Kyrie Thomas, they're 2 key guard wing players. Ed Cooley discussed specifically a couple things on Monday during the Big East media call when he was asked about Creighton. He said you really have to look at transition and offensive efficiency with them, and I think that's pretty fair to say. I went to Synergy to take a look and see exactly what Cooley was talking about, and he's pretty accurate on the transition aspect. They're 32nd in the country in points per possession in transition, and they play almost 25% of their possessions in transit on their offensive side in transition, which is the 3rd most offensive possessions in the country in transition. So they like to push the pace. Providence, on the other hand, likes to play a little slower. They have, I think, the slowest adjusted tempo in the Big East. And I think they'd like to play this game around 70 possessions. Creighton probably closer to 80. So I think it'll be a battle of who can control the tempo and speed of the game. Obviously, it helps if you score the ball. It helps prevent transition. So that could be something that Providence could look to do more consistently, which has been a bit of a problem with their 3, 4, 5-minute scoring droughts. But I think the key for Providence all season long, and it will be throughout the rest of this postseason here, is they need to be able to play defense consistently. And if they can do that, they can stay in any game, and God forbid they get hot once in a while and make some threes. And they can compete with anybody that they're going to face probably from here until April.
I think one thing too, Mike, is can we get Jalen Lindsey going again? He's been in the midst of about 4 or 5 game funk where he hasn't scored in double digits, struggled with his outside shot, which is uncharacteristic for a player who's been hailed as a very strong 3-point shooter. Can he get going? And can Rodney Bullock maybe channel that performance he had against Georgetown a couple Saturdays ago where he hit 5 threes and bring that to Madison Square Garden with him? But we mentioned those 2 seniors, but the senior that everything comes down to, and this player spoke about this during media availability at Alumni Hall on Monday morning, is Aaron Cartwright. In that first game against Creighton on New Year's Eve, Cartwright exited the game with, once again, an ankle injury that kind of bothered him for much of December. When the Friars and the Blue Jays met again a few weeks later in Providence, Cartwright had a tremendous game. He had about 20 points. He really controlled the tempo. Everything, like you mentioned, Creighton wants to play fast. PC has that kind of counterpunch with Cartwright when he's going at full speed.
Right, and that's the key. And I know you mentioned that I think you tweeted from Monday's practice that he's got a little bit of a hamstring, but I don't think it'll be anything to worry about right now.
No, I don't think it's anything to really worry about at this point.
Yeah, so I think at this point it's more about how much do you want it? I mean, for these seniors, this is it. If they manage to lose on Thursday and some things don't fall their way the rest of the week and come Selection Sunday, they become a 1 seed in the NIT, that's not how they want their careers to end. And they don't want to be the group that ends the streak that was started before their time. So really, just generally, I think that's a key thing. On Creighton, a couple other things on Creighton specifically. They've been dealing with some injuries lately too. Ronnie Harrell, who had stepped up nicely after Martin Krompool's injury, torn ACL in the middle of January. Harrell had stepped up well. He's their leading rebounder since Krompool went down. He missed the last 3 or 4 games with a foot injury. He did warm up on their last game, but didn't practice up until that point, so his status is unclear. Jacob Epperson, the freshman from Australia who was supposed to redshirt this year, decided to bag the redshirt after Krompool got hurt. He's played pretty well over the last month and a half, 2 months, and he went down with a little bit of a knee injury in their game against Marquette. Only played 2 second-half minutes. His status also unclear at this point as we're recording this. So those are 2 big potential pieces that could be banged up, or I don't know, unless there's something major that we are going to hear about. I think they'll probably both go. Playoff time, as Cooley said when he was talking about Kyron's hamstring, everybody's a little banged up this time of year. So aside from maybe the Big Ten, who gets a week off now because of their idiotic week early attempt to get into Madison Square Garden, I think everybody else just have to deal with the bumps and bruises. Other than that, though, I mean, it really comes down to tempo, making shots, and who wants it more. And I think Marcus Foster, as a senior, has a bit of a legacy he wants to put a stamp on at Creighton after he transferred in from Kansas State and found a second home with Greg McDermott. So, I mean, a lot of things up in the air here. Creighton pretty solidly in the tournament, I think. I think probably 7, 8, 9 is their seed line right now, most likely. So, as for the game itself, I don't know if it'll be anything special that'll happen, like maybe 4 years ago when Providence came out and just played zone a little bit against Doug McDermott, which everyone was very confused about. I don't think you'll see anything like that. These teams know each other well. Obviously, Ed Cooley and Greg McDermott are good friends, and they speak all the time. So, no secrets at this point in March. So, they really just need to show up, which has been a bit of a problem in the Big East tournament over the last several years, at least slow starts for Providence.
Yeah, it's last year I believe was a slow start. They trailed, I believe, big in the first half against Creighton last year. I mean, just go back to their history, like since winning the Big East tournament in 2014. 2015, I believe they beat St. John's. They lost to Villanova on a little bit of a controversial ending there. The following year, they beat Butler, and they lost to Villanova again. And last year, they lost to Creighton. I think if they win, they're all set. No questions asked. They're an NCAA tournament lock. If they lose, I still think they're in. I just think they'll end up going up to Dayton.
Yeah, that would be – I don't need to drive to Ohio again. So if they could avoid Dayton, that would be phenomenal. I mean, I'm not going to be choosy, but Charlotte wouldn't be a bad place. Or maybe Dallas, Pittsburgh wouldn't be bad in the sense that it would be drivable. But Charlotte's nice. Cheap flights, a 2.5-hour flight right down there. Maybe even play a little golf. We'll see. I mean, yeah, I'm not getting ahead of myself, but it wouldn't be bad.
In terms of NCAA polishing for either one of these squads, to be honest, given the RPIs and the metrics and things like that, this is like maybe really a resume polisher kind of game.
Certainly is a fun time of year for college basketball fans. Hope to see some people at Madison Square Garden this week and maybe even Saturday. We'll see how things go. Also, Providence has their big event later on Wednesday night at PJ Clark's. Possibly see some people there. Want to give a special shout-out now to some of my patrons. You can head over to patreon.com/PCBB1917. For as little as $3 a month, you get access to our Slack community. And I got to tell you, it's been a lot of fun. We talk all day, every day pretty much. Sometimes during the games, sometimes a little recruiting talk. I mean, it's all over the place. A lot of good guys in that group. So head over to patreon.com/PCBB1917 to check it out. I want to give a special shout-out now to JLD, John Lee Dumas, Mike Evans, my parents, Adam Nagel, Bob Allison, Ron Torbick, Brendan Ryan, Dan Marcus, Joe DeAngelis, Dennis Corbett, Mike Sayburn, Ray Penza, Dennis Burns, Alex Simeone, Chris Thurlow, G, Terry Meyer, and Alan Russ. Make sure you head over to iTunes to rate and review, and make sure you're subscribed so that you get automatically any new podcasts that we drop. We're hoping to have a few more if the Friars can keep moving here. We'd like to get one out before their next game after Thursday, whenever that is. If it's possibly we talk on after the Selection Sunday results. But make sure you're subscribed on iTunes, wherever you get your podcasts, so that you automatically are downloading our most recent episodes. And everybody in the Northeast dealing with nor'easter, the storm Quinn. Everybody stay safe out there. A little bit of a blizzard, so maybe just stay in and watch a lot of college hoops over the next few days. And we'll talk to everybody next time.
Don't forget to subscribe to the Providence Friarcast on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts.
Follow Mike Hopkins on Twitter and Instagram
At PCBB1917. Like the Facebook page, and as always, stay classy, Friartown.